today's webinar is around future skills of the workforce and the changing face of preparing students for life. So what we're talking about here, and I'll touch on it very slightly, it's preparing and allowing young people to thrive within and beyond the fourth industrial revolution. So if we think automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, all these types of things, they're going to have a huge role to play in our workforce, not of tomorrow, but today. The great thing about this, it's all underpinned by us, people. So skills like communication, being able to work as a team, collaborating, critical thinking, and our guest presenters will go into this in further detail today, but it's important to know that the future skills of the workforce are about people. So that's going to be a key focus of today. Next slide. Thank you, Damien. Before we get underway, I would like to acknowledge traditional landowners. So I'm based here on the Gold Coast. This is where I live. So we're going to acknowledge our traditional landowners of which we meet, and they are the Yugambeh people. So pay our respects to the elders past, present, and future. Our presenters today, so starting with Toby Hillman. Excellent for Toby to be here today. I will note early on that it is midnight where she's coming from today, and that is Twin Falls in Idaho. So Toby is currently wrapping up her role as a principal, has been a principal of Lighthouse Christian School for the past 4 years, however, has been at the school for the best part of 2 decades, started out as a volleyball coach, and to this day is still the volleyball coach and the head coach at that. Has a master's in education from Concordia University, and undergrad in education from Idaho State. So welcome, Toby. We're very much looking forward to your global insights into the future skills of the workforce. And my business partner, Damien Hecker, thanks for joining us. And I will just stop there for a moment. If anyone out there who is listening has your microphone on, please hit pause or mute. And if you have a question, then just unmute it and ask away, because the artificial intelligence and the algorithm of Zoom will pick up any background noise and just create a little bit of feedback across a lot of different microphones. So yeah, just hit mute if you've got some background noise going on. So Damien heads up, and thank you for that. Damien heads up our learning design here at Leaders Evolution, is a school teacher by trade, a PE teacher going back a few years, although it's essentially straddled the spheres of high performance sport, community sport, and education for the best part of 2 decades. So Damien's produced a little over 200 hours of online content for Leaders of Evolution, as well as our partners in some of Australia's biggest sporting clubs, Essendon Football Club, Gold Coast Suns, as well as not-for-profit in Special Olympics Australia that we've worked with closely, developing online content for over 4 years now. So welcome, Damien. And over to you to get into the nuts and bolts of today's webinar.
Thanks very much for that, John. I do appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and a special welcome to Toby all the way over on the other side of the world. And thank you so much for joining us tonight, Toby. We're really looking forward to you contributing with us now. I will note that I'm also admitting some of our attendees as I go here, so please bear with me if I'm a little clunky as I go through, and keep an eye on the participants as well as our content. John, thank you for that welcome. I do appreciate it. This is obviously something that we care about and are very passionate about here at Leaders of Evolution. We believe that there is an exciting opportunity right now to help our young people develop the future skills of the workforce through the education system. And we hope that by the end of today, you've taken away 1 or 2 things where you may be able to immediately put into action within your school. So that's our goal. Just a quick run through of the agenda. We're going to talk about the what, why, and how of today's session. I'll run through a bit of the data and research around the future skills of the workforce and how that's playing out and what that means for us as educators. I'll talk briefly about the new Work Smarts, a key piece of research developed here in Australia by the Foundation for Young Australians. Quickly touch on the curriculum alignment, and Toby will also go through some insights from the classroom. So Toby has been facilitating the Future Skills of the Workforce programs that we have, online learning programs that we have in her classrooms over there in Idaho. And she'll talk about some of her learnings about how to effectively fuse technology, the research behind the future skills of the workforce, and how to make it meaningful for your students. So that's what our session looks like. And then John will wrap us up with what is next. I'll just touch on the what, why, and how. And please excuse me if I'm a little bit croaky. No, I don't have COVID living here in Victoria, but at this time of the year and with a sick young fella, I've just had a little bit of an illness the last week. So hopefully things still come through loud and clear here. What are we learning here? I've touched on it briefly, but the research behind the skills required for success in the workforce of 2030. It is an important and far-reaching trend at the moment. Organisations like the Foundation for Young Australians here in Australia have done some research, but also companies like Deloitte, PwC, who are invested in their growth as a business as well. So it's quite wide-ranging, the research that is out there. The trends and data highlight the need for us to teach these skills explicitly. A lot of you have probably heard the term soft skills. This is just a personal opinion, but I don't think these skills are soft by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're quite difficult skills to learn that often take us a lifetime. So it's important that we're able to provide a platform for our young people to start learning those from an early age. Why are we learning this? Well, the skills of 2030 really are now. It's not about preparing young people for 10 years' time. It's about building a suite of skills that they can work on and master over their lifetimes. Yes, they're going to be very effective with these skills by the time the future of work changes, and it is changing in front of us right now, but we want to give them the platform to start learning that straight away. And certainly COVID has accelerated the need to develop these skills. Victoria today goes into another lockdown where young people are going to be challenged with their growth mindset, their learning agility, their ability to be autonomous and focus on tasks without the support of their teacher in the classroom. So it is really important that we provide that learning to our young people now. And our belief is everyone in education has a role to play in preparing young people for life. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted when I mention that to our group here today. Importantly, and this is what I always try and focus on, is how can the value be brought through for you as a learner? Firstly, if you haven't already touched on this subject or started to investigate it, hopefully this provides the first entry point for you to start looking into what are the future skills of the workforce and what is the research behind them. But also, more importantly, how can you start to bring that to life within your own school's context? So whether that might be drip feeding some ideas or activities in over the coming weeks, or something more comprehensive, certainly we have resources available to assist with that. But what's the next step for you guys after today is one of my key takeaways. You can head to our education hub. There are a bunch of free materials that will help you start that quest, and John will touch on that at the end of our session today. So hopefully that sums up nicely our what, why, and our how. Just quickly, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a minute and welcome Toby. Hi there, Toby. Feel free to take yourself off mute, and maybe if you want to just provide, before we get into the content, give me a short break and provide a little bit of context about some of the work that we've been doing over the last 3 to 6 months.
Our school is a relatively small private school, but I would say close to 10 years ago, we started recognizing that the workforce was changing and that learning was changing. And so it's really been almost a 10-year process for us of trying to move students and parents and teachers forward into thinking about the workforce, what the workforce is going to look like in the future. But in the last 3 to 6 months, as you mentioned, we took some of the kids through the LOE curriculum, but we've also developed some things in the past few months of our own to work on growth mindset, leadership, digital integration and what that looks like. So that's some of the work that we've been doing. And I love that you said that those skills are not soft. because I think we've been doing some work in that regard too, is helping people understand that these skills are not soft because they're so important and they're such key skills for the future.
Thanks, Toby. Absolutely. And I think language is absolutely critical when we engage our young people in these conversations and help them understand the importance of it. So thanks for providing that brief intro. Throughout today, I'll be leaning on Toby to discuss really explicitly what some of this research and the work that we're talking about today means and looks like in the classroom, and how our educators on the call today might be able to use some of those learnings tomorrow, hopefully, or certainly beyond that. So why do we need to develop capacity right now? This slide will just touch on some of the data that's come out from various research points. So Upwork is a gig economy platform, a place where you can put your skills up for hire, basically, anywhere around the world. And people can engage you to work on certain projects. And this is a platform that we use within our business, often for short sprint projects. So by 2028, millennials and Gen Z will make up 50% of the workforce. So the people that are coming through our system right now and who will be at some point probably managing our super funds are going to be making up almost 60% of the workforce. And that's really important when we look at capacity of the workforce and how we can start building that capacity now. By 2028, again, 73% of all teams will have remote workers. As a small business, we have this now, and we have had this for a number of years. John's been based on the Gold Coast for almost 5 years now, and I've been in Melbourne and now regional Victoria for that period of time. So the skills required to work in remote teams, yes, there are a lot of similarities to going into the office every day, but there are nuances as well. So with such a high number of people working in remote teams in the future, and we're seeing that with a lot of workers now having hybrid versions of in the office or at home, those skills are going to be required, and a lot of people are going to be in those environments in the future as well. Importantly, young people, 52% in this survey rank future workforce planning a priority, which is much higher than baby boomers in the same survey, which we might expect young people going into their careers very eager for that. But what it shows that there's a thirst there. There's a thirst for millennials and Gen Z to be looking at the future of work, what it means for them, and how they can place themselves to be effective within that future environment. From the 2020 education report, really interesting one that I'm sure will resonate, but just over half of school principals say equipping young people with future skills is one of the most challenging and pressing challenges, for their school. We also ran our own research recently that we'll be able to share after today in collaboration with Amazon Web Services. And this data was reflected in our research as well, where it was clear that our research group felt that there was a critical need to develop these skills in young people. However, a lot of them did not have the programs and resourcing in place to do that. So I think that confliction is a real one, and something that hopefully together we can help solve over the coming years. And this data changes a little bit from year to year, but the last one that we had, which was from late last year through the World Economic Forum, was 65% of children entering primary school end up in jobs that don't yet exist, which is kind of quite hard to imagine. But if you take a look over the last 10 years and how things have changed in the last 20 years, we know that that evolution is upon us, it's in front of us, and it will continue to escalate into the future as well. Ultimately, the skills needed to be effective in the future of work are changing. So providing that contextual understanding and that preparation, we believe, will support young people to confront this change, which is happening and is real, with confidence, and allow them to flourish when they do enter the workforce and start growing their career after that as well. So some interesting data there from some different sources as well. So the future skills are reshaping the workforce, and John touched on this at the start of our presentation, where he mentioned that these future workforce skills are inherently human. Technology will continue to automate the processes and procedures and tasks within a lot of businesses. We see that through AI and machine learning and the development of new technology and machinery. But the ability to be human, to have empathy, to work in teams, to collaborate effectively, to make critical judgments based on emotional data, all of those things which robots at this point cannot do and are unlikely to be able to do, certainly into the near future, is what will provide people who have those skills a bit of a trampoline into being effective in the workplace. So we've provided the example of the bartender or doctor who have to have that conversation with someone. They have to be able to read emotional data, have empathy and judgment, all of those things. And in brackets, teachers are exactly the same. And I think COVID has shown us how important the in-class experience is for teachers and students. So yes, the future skills are changing, but it's what makes us inherently human, and what we can be great at as humans is what will make us successful. So focusing and honing in on those elements when we work with young people is going to be critical to providing them that framework for success in the future. Also, it's just not about getting a degree, going to uni and getting a job anymore. Organisations like Google are changing the way things are being done. They have 6-month certificates that are available now, which focus absolutely solely on providing the learner with an opportunity to work in their business in a certain technical area. They're affordable. They're not 4 years at college anymore. A young person could certainly finish high school and then go straight into one of these certificates and potentially be working for one of the world's biggest organisations within 6 months. So this is the way that we need to be thinking now about how agile we need to be about our decision-making, how we can encourage young people to learn and to find opportunities to better themselves and be marketable within the labour market all over the world. An important part of what Google do as well is, yes, a lot of the certificates are technical based, but they've also done a lot of research around the importance of working in teams and how to work in teams effectively, which is showcased through Project Aristotle, which we actually touch on in one of our courses. Toby, I might just hand over to you quickly because there is significant change within the American college system at the moment, and how young people are going from their high school experience into college and the worth of the college experience. Do you want to just touch on how that's shaping up over in the States?
Well, there's a lot of really interesting things going on in the college system. I think good and bad. I heard recently that some of the major college systems in the US are throwing out ACT and SAT scores, which that's a huge shift. There are colleges that are moving to more mastery-based transcripts, or the acceptance of more mastery-based transcripts. So that is showing that colleges are shifting into that idea of what kids know and what they're able to do is more important than the grades that they're getting or their GPA. And I also think you're seeing a shift in how students are looking at college. You still have that idea of you have to get a degree and you have to get certain grades in some students, but there are also a lot of students who don't really see college as a necessity anymore, where maybe they're going to go to college just to get the college experience, but they don't necessarily do it because of the material that they're going to learn. So I think we're in a really interesting time where colleges are really shifting. The way people learn in college is shifting. The move to online is becoming a much bigger thing. And I think students are looking at it differently. And finally, I think colleges are looking at it a little differently too, because for me as a high school educator, as soon as higher education makes some of those valuable changes to prepare kids for the future, then we can all make those changes a lot more freely, I think. So there's some good and bad going on in the US college system, but I think ultimately it's all good because it's all causing us to ask questions and move forward on preparing kids for the future in a better way, one that's going to truly revolutionize the workforce in the future.
Thanks, Toby. I appreciate that. I think there's some really interesting insights from the other side of the world, certainly here in Australia. Yeah, the skills over scores debate is a real one right now, and something that yeah, there needs to be balance too, of course, but the ability to develop the skills within our young people in the here and now, I think, is going to be just as valuable as any score on an exit paper. Just apologies for my quick exit then as well, because I mentioned at the start, I do have a sick toddler who is just causing a bit of ruckus in the background. So there's the future of work for you right there. Remote workers, remote teams, all happening on Zoom calls. There it is for everyone to look at. So my apologies there. Let's get back to our presentation. Just the last one I wanted to touch on here, which is really important and relevant for our group, is the role of EdTech. EdTech is one of the booming sectors within the global economy. Certainly COVID accelerated that, but it was growing before COVID anyway. And it's the sector that we're in, so we're a big believer in it and how it can work, but also recognise the challenges as well about bringing technology into schools and into classrooms and providing the support for teachers and the context for students and the resourcing as well, the hardware to be able to access some of this technology. So it's not a panacea or a silver bullet, but what it is a range of options and opportunities to find the right tool with the right pedagogical frameworks and structure to answer the problems that you might have in your school. So I think it's really critical that as part of this future of work theory and debate evolves, is that we look towards technology and seeing how that can amplify the teaching and learning process for students and for teachers as well. John, question without notice, but I know that you're great with your data. The EdTech sector itself over the next 5 years, can you rattle off the numbers?
Oh, look, I'll see what I do. I'll at least give you an answer with confidence. No, it's going to compound 12.2% year on year between now and 2025. At the moment, it's just a touch over $200 billion. So the entire vertical, primary, secondary, and into tertiary, as well as adult learning, to about just a touch over 2 billion right now, but it's going to be over 4 billion by 2025. So huge vertical growth globally. 400 billion. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's clearly a massive sector, and I'm sure everyone on the call has had their own touch and feel with experience of EdTech over the journey, and no doubt it will become something much more tangible over the coming years. I'll touch on the future skills, so the Foundation for Young Australians' new work smarts shortly. But one piece of research that came through within that research report is about how teaching is likely to change. And a lot of you are probably seeing this at the moment as well, with the technology that's available and the more autonomy we're giving our students as well. It's likely to lead to an increase in more facilitation, so a facilitative approach to teaching from a teacher's perspective, and allowing students to find and use the most appropriate resources to achieve their learning goals. And that's starting to happen. There's no doubt about that already. But as you can see there, and this is based on a lot of research and billions of hours of work that has been analysed in the new Work Smarts research. You can see there the increase in facilitating student learning versus those repetitive tasks like grading and simply lecturing as well. Toby, we had a quick chat about this yesterday when we were planning. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on from your in-class experience?
I would say we're definitely seeing this. And I think what I see as the challenge that I would really encourage everyone to really think through and work on is understanding that it really is positive. I think that change is always hard. And especially in education, sometimes anything that swings how we have done something for a long time is very hard or seen as very hard. And so I love that phrase, it's positive. I think that's the huge thing, is accepting that this new role of facilitation doesn't devalue the role of a teacher. To me, it actually increases the value of the role of a teacher. So a long time ago, teachers used to be a child's only source of information or knowledge. Kids would come into the school building, they didn't know things, and the teacher would make sure that they knew those things and they would leave. But now it's different. That information, that knowledge is all around us. And so teachers have to take on that role of not giving the information, but helping students know how to use it, how to find what they need, how to learn, how to know how to use it. And so I think a lot of times teachers struggle in this idea of this disruption in teaching, and they think because there's more digital, or because their tools have become more digital, that their role is somehow less valuable. And so I would really encourage helping teachers see that their role is actually more valuable, that it's not passive, that it can still be active, even if they are facilitating and not lecturing all the time. I think teachers need to see their role not as a grader or a lecturer or an instructor even, but really as a leader and a facilitator and a mentor, because when you begin to see yourself that way, that opens up all these opportunities for teachers to help students build the skills that really do make them uniquely human, which you just mentioned. Those human skills are the things that cannot be replicated by a machine. And so as long as teachers are continuing to be actively engaged with students, which you see is still going to be important, it's still going to happen. Those are all positive and those are all valuable. So I think that's the key that I would say is it is positive.
Great, thanks, Toby. So we've just gone through a bunch of research and data. Hopefully that's got our audience thinking, getting the old hamster wheel turning over. You might have made a few notes, but what I'd love to do is just have a purposeful pause for about 90 seconds, just as I welcome in Tom. Welcome, Tom, that you're in here now. Just 90 seconds on a purposeful pause around the data and the state of play. So what's got you thinking? What does this data mean for your students or your teaching? Now, you can make your own notes here if you find that valuable, or if you'd like to, feel free to drop them in the chat, because we'd love to have a look at and consider what everyone is thinking at the moment as well. So I'll leave that open for about 90 seconds for you to make your own notes, or possibly drop them in the chat. Thanks, John. There's no doubt that the opportunities to enhance the teachers' capacity into the future and harnessing technology is an exciting development. Scary for some people as well, but exciting, I think, for most of us. Just give us another 30 seconds there just to make some notes, and we'll move on with the second half of today's presentation. John, feel free also just to monitor the chat and interrupt me at any point if you think there's something that we should focus on and have a chat about. Okay, welcome to our a couple of participants who have just joined us as well. Thanks for joining us today. You'll be able to get the first half of today's webinar via recording as well, so you don't miss out on anything. So let's slip into some of the research around the skills of 2030. Some of you may know the Foundation for Young Australians. They're a youth advocacy organisation based here in Australia. Their New Work Smarts and the New Work Order research series has been conducted over the last probably 4 or 5 years now, I think. So they've been well on top of this trend and this emerging trend for a while now. The part of research that got me was these New Work Smarts, which they developed under the pillars of being a smart learner, a smart thinker, and a smart doer. And sitting underneath those pillars are the characteristics of the future workforce and who we need, or what characteristics, we need to have as well. So I'm going to touch on those today, unpack the characteristics, and then Toby's going to talk about how she has been able to effectively teach and support some of her students develop those skills within that context within schools. So I touched on that this research has been around for quite a while. It's not COVID driven. We've already touched on also the fact that it's what's human that makes us important, plus STEAM. This isn't just about human skills, technology, engineering, maths, and the arts as well. It's still going to be really, really important. They're a value add to these human skills that we're talking about. I touched on earlier as well that philosophy of skills over scores and what's going to continue to be valued within the workforce in the future. Previously it might have been what school you came from and what score did you get. Things are starting to change, and certainly as a small business, the first thing that I would want to know is what sort of skills are you bringing to our team as an employer. Companies like Amazon, Google, and Facebook have that same philosophy. The research, as well as I touched on earlier, PwC, Deloitte, the OECD, they've all produced research reports that have touched on very, very similar outcomes. The language might be slightly different. The key wording might be slightly different. The grouping might be slightly different. But the philosophy and the overarching skills are very, very similar. So I think that's important for us to note as well. You should all be able to hear me again. I'm just going to play this video for everyone. This sums up the new work smarts in 2 minutes.
Skills of the future. 2030 might seem like a long time in the future, but when you think about it, you will still only be in the early stages of your career. Regardless of what career path you choose, the new work smarts and the skills related to them are a big deal. So here's the download on the research conducted by the Foundation for Young Australians and what it means for you. Firstly, jobs will change because the need to do routine manual tasks will decrease. The need to focus on people and solve problems will increase. This means you will need to be a smart learner. This is someone who can learn quickly at work and is enthusiastic about learning. Smart thinker. This means you think creatively, you like to solve problems, and you have good interpersonal skills, which means you're good working with people. And you also need to be a smart doer. This means you need to be an autonomous worker, or in other words, someone who can get on with the task with minimal instruction and supervision. Spending time on skills such as learning new technologies, engaging and working with people, using maths and science, written communication, critical thinking, and having an entrepreneurial mindset will all increase. On the other hand, areas such as organisation management and teaching and completing routine tasks will all decrease. So now you have an idea on the skills that are required for the future workforce. You can set about working on these and setting yourself up for future success.
So that short animation is from one of our courses. So that is aimed at students to help them understand in a really short amount of time what these skills are required and why into the future. But hopefully that also provides some context for our audience today as well. So smart learner, I've summed that person up as the sponge. You could think about some of the students in your care at the moment. They're the people who really value learning, who are inquisitive, they're curious, they want to find out why, and they want to find out more. And that is going to be a critical skill. And if you look at, I pulled one quote from the FYA research around Australian workers will spend 1/3 of their hours at work learning, which is a 30% increase from today. So as you can imagine, as new technologies come through, as strategies and directions change and are really agile, certainly now and into the future they will be. We need to be agile learners. We need to be able to learn quickly. We need to value learning and the role that it plays in being an effective and successful employee. So some of those traits around the smart learner are things like growth mindset, learning agility, that critical thinking and observation as well, learning from those around us. Learning about people and relationships as well. So that human side that we've spoken about almost ad nauseum today. and adapting to new technologies and information. People who are less prepared to change in the future are more likely to be left behind, because things will adapt so quickly that there won't be room for people who want to stay stuck in a traditional way of working or in a certain way of working. So, Toby, what does the sponge look like at your school?
I think the easiest way for me to sum up what this looks like for us, or what we've tried to frame this at our school with the students, are these two phrases: learning is the goal and learning is the reward. And then the second phrase is knowing what I have learned and versus I know how to learn. So I think the statistic that hit us the hardest was when they started talking about how the kids we were preparing are going into jobs that don't exist yet. That for us as a leadership team was such a powerful statement, to think about the fact that we're preparing kids in a system that quite honestly was developed for the Industrial Revolution and menial tasks and all that, to prepare kids to go out into a workforce that is going to require constant learning. So for us, that became huge. Kids have to know that it's not about what they've learned as much as it is about that they know how to learn. And that we wanted them to start seeing the learning and the process of learning as the goal and as the reward, as opposed to grades being the reward or some of those other things that had been focused on. And so here for us, that's been hard, honestly, to get people to really see the value of that, and to understand the value of that smart learner. But I think that as kids are beginning to see the world change, they're starting to hear what we're saying about growth mindset, and they're starting to hear what we're saying about the ability to adapt and to learn and to be agile in how they learn. So that's what I would really stress is for us, the key was getting that connection for kids to understand that it's not so much about what they learn anymore. It's about the ability to learn. So for us, that's what it looks like.
Great, thanks, Toby. Yeah, the process over the content, so to speak, and to a degree. Probably one thing I should mention as well as we go through this, and Toby shares some of her insights, is that if you do have any questions or want to find out a bit more about any of it, please feel free to drop that in the chat. John will happily interrupt me as I'm on a roll so we can explore some of your questions and thinking. So please do feel free to drop any questions in the chat as we go. So the smart thinker, the second pillar, I've summed this up when you look at the characteristics as the leader and the coach of the future. So the skills, and this is the statement I found to back that up, is the skills that will matter most in the workplace of the future are by a wide margin problem solving, judgment, and critical thinking. All things that we might align with effective leaders and really effective coaches as well. So what are some of those characteristics? Problem solving, of course, is important. I touched on earlier about the social and emotional element of learning and using emotional data to help make decisions as well, and especially in environments that might be more like this, the virtual environment that we're finding ourselves in more and more these days, and how you can read emotional data in that environment versus being in a room face to face, and how you act and behave in accordance with that data that you're taking on board. Judgment is a critical one, emotional judgment, but also technical, about the role, about the skill set, decision making, about the process and what you might be trying to achieve as a team. Certainly critical thinking is something that continues to make its mark importantly within our curriculum these days as well. We've spoken about the ability to have really effective interpersonal skills, to be a good coach, to be a good mentor, which Toby touched on earlier as the role of the teacher. And importantly, verbal communication is going to be a really, really important skill. And we might think that sounds potentially a bit odd, considering all of the mediums that we use to communicate with now, but being able to verbally communicate, and especially having the skill set to write effectively, is going to be a very, very, or continue to be a very, very important skill set into the future. And leadership we have touched on as well. So no doubt a whole bunch of characteristics that probably implicitly a lot of our audience today are already doing within their environments. Toby, tell us a bit more about the smart thinker and how you try to assist students in developing these skills.
I think the easiest way to talk about the smart thinker is to go back to the age-old question of, how am I going to use this in my real life? You know, you always get that from kids. How am I going to use this algebra problem that I don't like doing? How am I going to do this? How is this going to really be relevant to my life? And I think that in the older days of education, we could kind of say, well, that it just is the way it is, or because I said so, or whatever. But nowadays, kids are so exposed to information that they know that there are a lot of things that they're learning. There's a lot of content that they're learning that may not be relevant in the future. They know that. So I think the key for us, especially, and Damien, I kind of shared with you a story of a student I was working with this week, even, who had missed a lot of school and was way behind in math. And he was very frustrated about, I have all this math to do and I don't really like it and it's hard. And so that was an amazing opportunity for me to stop for a second and help reframe that situation so that he could see the value of problem solving and critical thinking and communication skills and all of those things in the future. So I gave him a little picture of the future and what his future job may look like. And then we were able to come back to the math and say, how could solving this problem help you in the future? How could becoming better at critical thinking help you in the future? So then he was able to see it didn't really matter about exactly if he got the right answer. What really mattered was that he was learning how to solve tough problems. He was having to figure out how to overcome a challenge. And he was having to have a conversation with me about it. And all of those things are key for the future. So I think the key for us is helping the kids see the value of that smart thinker, how they need that in the future, and how what they're doing now can build that. So all of a sudden, algebra takes on a new form when you know, in the future, I have to be a good problem solver. Therefore, I will make peace with this algebra problem because I know that it's not about the problem, it's about the process, and it's about what I'm going to learn from that process. So, for us, it's really just making that connection and that bridge between what we're doing now and how that's going to help in the future.
Yeah, it's a great story, Toby. And I think that reinforces what we've been speaking about with the importance of the role of the teacher in the classroom or in the office, or having that conversation, that mentorship and that coaching, which often we don't get through technology. So I think that's a great way of how we bind the two together, effective in classroom practice with the EdTech side of things as well. We'll go on to our final pillar here, the smart doer, the worker bee. And again, if you think about the young people within your care and charge at the moment, those people who will go over and above what a lot of their peers might in terms of the effort they apply and put in, maybe not just to their schoolwork, but other areas of their life as well. So the quote that I put out was around young people of today will need to manage their own time more. And you can understand that with the importance of learning within the future workforce and taking responsibility for your own learning. Less management as well means more responsibility on your time. They'll need to make more decisions about priority and the importance of tasks, and can be more personally motivated and driven, which are really critical skills that we want to be encouraging in our young people now, so that they can take those as inherent skills into the future. We do want to see autonomous young people. We do want to see young people who are self-directed, who know their goals and know how to chase them and achieve them. But also that level of accountability. I think Toby might touch on this, but it's great to have autonomy, but we need accountability with it as well. Autonomy without accountability won't help us gain results. So yes, we want to provide that autonomy to young people, but also make sure that they understand that they'll be held to account with the processes and decisions that they make. Decision-making, time management, a really simple principle, but even now as a small business owner, you're still looking at ways to enhance that and be more effective of that. teaching, you have a small, minute amount of time in the day and to work with your students. How do you most effectively manage your time in those situations? It's an ongoing skill that requires thought and that entrepreneurial mindset as well. And that doesn't mean that every young person has to enter the gig economy. It doesn't mean that they have to start their own business, but if they take the mindset of an entrepreneur, the creative thinking, the problem solving, the looking at things outside of the box in a different way, that's going to serve them well within their future workforce, wherever that may be. So, Toby, what's a worker bee look like and do over there in the States?
Well, to me, this is the hardest one. I think that to actually do well with the majority of students, I think you have certain students who naturally fall into the worker bee kind of mentality. But I think when we're talking about how important this is for all students, now it gets to be a tougher job. I think this is a key area that we could honestly unpack for a long time, because I think it's so important. Because creating students who are autonomous and self-directed and accountable and have good time management in an educational sense, that gets messy and risky. To really create educational experiences that put kids into this mentality, it's going to be a little messy and it's going to be risky. And so to me, this is the hardest one. And it also takes support from the entire community, I believe. I believe that parents have to support students in this way. I believe that teachers have to be on board with it, because really, students have to have some freedom and be given those opportunities. I think they need to be given responsibility. They need to be given room to fail and to learn from those failures. And there needs to be a strong partnership to provide that accountability. There needs to be strength with the parents and the teachers so that they can have those opportunities and also like be supported in that. So I don't think I have a great picture of how we're doing that well, because I think that's an area that we frankly struggle in for those reasons that I mentioned. And so definitely this is something that I want to see our school continue to work on, and I think everyone probably needs to work on.
One thing we did touch on with our planning yesterday as well, Toby, was that almost joint force to help as educators, helping parents understand the importance of these trends, as well as the students. Toby, I might get you to take over for a second.
Yeah, so what Damien's mentioning is we were talking about how there really is a parent education piece to all of this that is critical. When you have parents who were educated in a different generation and who perhaps work in a context that is different, when you're talking about building these kind of skills for students, all of a sudden the support around those students becomes even more important. And so we were talking about how important parent education is, and whether that comes from a school or a curriculum or wherever that comes from. I think that that's something that we don't talk about a lot in future skills conversations. But to me, if we're going to do this well as a body of educators around the world, we have to get parents on board and parents educated on what the workforce looks like in the future and what their kids need to be successful in that. Because I think the way a lot of parents define success now is still in the older way that maybe isn't necessarily going to work in this economy, in this global world.
Thank you. Keep going.
You want me to keep going? Okay, got it. So Damien had asked me to kind of go through for us as a school, how we were making it work, some insights in the classroom. And so I'm just going to go through some of the things that for us were important. Like I said, this has been about a 10-year journey where we saw what was coming up ahead, and we saw the value of teaching students these future skills. And we realized they weren't soft. We realized they were vitally important. And the first thing that I always say when people ask about why we do what we do is you have to get people to understand that why. Students have to see the why, and they have to see it for themselves. You can't just tell them, this is what the world's going to look like, and this is what you need. They really have to see it. And so my advice would be find ways to bridge that gap between the concept and reality. Help students see what the future is going to look like and what they need. They need to understand the skills that they need for the workforce. They need to truly understand why we're enforcing the things we're enforcing, and we're teaching the things we're teaching. And they have to see their future a little bit to get that. And I think there's also, like we just said, there's helping parents see the why also, because in a small way, we all have to kind of let go of what we thought the future might be, or what we thought the future for our kids might be, or we thought the future for our students may be. We kind of have to let that go a little bit and be very realistic about what the future is looking like and where the world's going. And so the why is super important. And then the how for us started with conversations. It started with conversations with parents, conversations with kids, conversations amongst our staff, but primarily conversations with the kids. The more you talk about it, the more they see the reality of it, the more powerful it becomes. And then some other things we've done that have really helped. And this was another thing I loved about the Leaders of Evolution curriculum in our classrooms, is it really helped spear the kids on to researching the future, researching jobs, researching what the workforce will look like. We brought in guest speakers who are working in industries that are changing things that are somewhat revolutionary. We did some panels where the kids were able to ask those questions and really see what the workforce looked like. So that was really good. And then just authentic application. And for us, that was as hands-on as we could make it. And obviously this year was hard with COVID, but so that's projects, interactions with technology, job shadowing, internships, all of that. Anything that you can do to get kids authentically experiencing what the workforce may look like in the future, then they begin to see it. And all of a sudden, those things make sense and those skills make sense, and their learning becomes more valuable. The next thing is the teaching part. And I think that the most important thing that I have seen is the vulnerability that's required in the teachers. It's learning such a vulnerable process to begin with, but when you're asking teachers who are educated one way to change the way they're doing things, to educate kids for a future that they can't quite grasp, that's a huge thing. And that's a vulnerable thing. And so for me, one of the most valuable things for us was our teachers being vulnerable enough to step into that learning process and say, we're going to learn this together. There's amazing power in that phrase, we're going to learn this together. And so to me, that's huge. And then the last thing is just that shifting mindset. You cannot teach kids to have a growth mindset when you don't have one yourself. I really believe that. And I think sadly in a lot of education, a fixed mindset is the standard, because we've kind of been taught that, if you're intelligent, you're intelligent, or if you're this way, you're going to stay this way. And so another big step is we as educators and leaders, we have to have a growth mindset in ourselves first, so that we can share that mindset with the kids. And some of that growth for teachers comes in the areas of embracing the shift from paper to digital, embracing that role that digital plays, and not looking at it as a threat, but looking at it as a way to be innovative, to learn with the kids how to do that, how to use technology to be innovative and creative and collaborative and all those things that matter in the world that we're creating right now. And so that was huge for us, making sure that we're shifting that mindset in our teachers to growth, that we're shifting that mindset from technology as a passive tool to an active and interactive and innovative tool. So those were some of the things that were very important to us, and the things that have really helped us shape how our kids think about moving into the future.
Thank you, Toby, and thank you for saving me. We did plan for that as well because we thought it could happen at some point. So thanks for bearing with me, everyone. I was a bit worried that my voice was going to go at some point, and it did. So I'll move on quickly to the last part of our program today. Toby, thanks so much for that. That was outstanding. We really appreciate it. So to finish off with, one of the things that I was eager for everyone to be able to do was to take something away. So we don't quite have time to do a purposeful pause, but please do think about how today's content might help you in tomorrow or the next day or next week or into the future, because it's an exciting space and an important one for us all as educators to be in and to be looking at how we support our students. Just quickly on curriculum alignment, there are plenty of, in Australia, curriculum alignment to this space now. So it's being recognised as an important piece of the curriculum, and encouraged for school departments to look at how they are aligning and working and providing opportunities for their young people to work on these areas. So they're just a few of some of the curriculum alignment that I've been able to find. Please check your own state or national bodies for these, but the National Career Education Strategy is a really good one, and I advise you to go and have a look at that. So we've spoken about our purposeful pause. It's 4:59, so unless we've had any questions come through the comments, we might just have to wrap up without any Q&A, but I will provide all of our email addresses, myself, John's, and Toby's as well down the bottom, because if you do have any questions, queries, anything at all that you think we can help with, I would be, or we all would be, more than happy to support you in finding out the answers to those. So just before I hand over to John, thank you everyone for your attendance. It's great to see we've kept everyone on board today. Thank you for your patience with my voice, and importantly, thank you to Toby for staying up in the middle of the night over there and providing your insights and wisdom, because I think it's such, one of the things we spoke about when we were planning was how much I thought it would resonate, even though it's on the other side of the world, that, yeah, certainly your experiences would resonate with what we're doing over here in Australia. And we can't thank you enough for your contribution. So thanks heaps. We appreciate it. Thank
you for having me. It was worth staying up for.
Oh, very good, very good. Well, and congratulations on your tenure as well, because I know tomorrow or the next day will be your last day at school. So congrats on that. It's a pretty cool thing. John, I'm going to save my voice. I'm going to get you to rescue me now. I'm going to dob out. Thanks again, everyone. We really do appreciate it. And as I say, if I can be helpful at all, please contact me after today. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Damien. And I'll just get you to bring up what we can do here, because this is an opportunity. We're incredibly passionate about this space. And I think, Toby's actions tonight, staying up to midnight, really represents that. So there is an opportunity for you guys to follow a really simple process and get started and save some money, because there is the odd hurdle that you need to face is getting this signed off within budget. So this isn't something we usually do. So there's a 50% rebate or a 50% off voucher if you head to our online portal, where we have a number of different courses available for 10 to 18-year-olds in and around leadership, life skills, social emotional learning, everything that we've spoken about today. So our goal is to create a pathway of learning and a suite of resources that not only supports the students on their endeavours, but also empowers and equips teachers with the tools templates, resources to make your job easier. So you can follow those steps there to get started and jot down that coupon code, 50% off. And at the checkout, pop that in and you will save a little or a lot, depending on how many students. So if it's 1 or 2 students, that's okay. Or if it's hundreds, that's okay as well. So we're all about, if you need to start small or start large, we're here to support you in any capacity. So it's 2 minutes after. We're going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for your time, Damien. Time to go get a lozenge. Call it a day. You've done plenty, mate. Have a rest. Toby, once again, thank you very much. And again, if anyone out there has any questions, feel free to get in touch with myself, Damien, and or Toby, and we can continue the conversation. Thank you and good afternoon.